Hello and welcome to this edition of the ASHA podcast. I'm Fred Wyan with the American Sexual Health Association, ASHA, and we are in breath of fresh air territory today, intrepid listeners, because we're chatting with someone who self-describes as just a broad who wants to talk about the stuff no one taught us. And that stuff includes body parts, gender, sexuality, intimacy, and if I have my way, sexually transmitted infections. So Julia Fowlkes, welcome.
Hi. You said my last name right. Nobody ever does that.
You know what? I was hesitating there just for a second, like, but thank you for confirming that. Okay.
Perfect.
Folks, there you go. All right. Well, you're an aspiring sexual health educator. So what exactly are you studying? What's your deal?
Well, I'm studying something called human development and family science. It's a huge major. Some people do teaching, speech language pathology, child life specialists. And initially, when I started, I was thinking about doing like marriage and family therapy. But then I kind of started to realize how stoked I am about this stuff. And I was like, you know what? I think my attention might be better focused towards sexuality education.
I think you found your calling. Tell me about your TikTok channel, where I understand your handle is Sex Ed Miss Frizzle. All right. All right, you have one clip alone that has something like 4.5 million views and 900,000 likes, right? So what's that about, and what do you do on your channel?
Um, that's all pretty new. It all that blew up like a few weeks ago. Um, and I didn't even have a TikTok at the time. And now I'm like, I guess making content, I guess you could call it. And it all started with
Found out what
the actual like organ of the clitoris looks like, that it wasn't just what you can see on the top. I was like so interested in it. And so I made this like out of clay. I sculpted a little model, as one typically does with their free time,
Yes, of course, yeah.
but par for the course. And my roommates and I, we had a party, and I like sat it out with the charcuterie because I thought it'd be funny. And a lot of people were asking me about it, and I was like, oh my God, this is really interesting. Nobody knew this, and I love talking about it. And like a few months later, I ran into one of the party guests at a bar, and he was like, hey, clitoris girl, got to be the best way a stranger has ever uh, shouted at me before. Um, but my sister came over, and I was to my apartment. I was like giving her a tour of stuff. And then I showed her the clitoris, and
Mhm.
she was like, wait, this is great. Let me record it to send to whoever. And then I was like, okay. And she was like, hey, can I post this on TikTok? And I was like, okay. Um,
Wow, 4.5 million views. I'm incredibly jealous of that. I mean, and that's just, yeah, completely organic, right? I mean, you didn't do anything to really push it out. Is that right?
no, it just, the clitoris spoke for herself.
It does. I want to tell you, and hear me roar, right? Okay,
Right.
very good. So, what else do you do besides talk about Miss Clitoris? What else is on your channel?
Um, it's just kind of, it's really an amalgamation of a lot of stuff. As my self-described thing is like just the broad who wants to talk about the stuff that nobody taught us,
Mhm.
just things that I feel like everybody should have access to. Like when the initial video blew up, like it blew up, terrifying. But what really was like really cool to me was looking at the comments and reading the comments. There were people as young as like teenagers and as old as like retirees who were saying that like this is the first time they've heard that. Um, if only they had like learned more things like that, school would have been fun. They wanted more things explained that way. Um, and so I love talking about this stuff. I always have. Um, and it's just insane that people like are actually not only listening but like benefiting from what I say. And so I just kind of tailor whatever I make, whatever I talk about, to what people ask me to talk about, what they don't know. Like the feedback I've gotten, the things that people have, like the stories that people have trusted me with, like either in the comments or privately in DMs, move me to tears more more than once. But generally, I'd say my most or my big thing is like if I could help even one person learn about their body in a positive way, great. But the little community I've built, there's so many people are learning, and I think
Sure.
I think that's great. And I want to help people figure out how to navigate that safely and confidently and happily, and create an environment where people want to ask questions, where they feel safe and accepted enough to do it. And they feel like the answers they get aren't like biased, boring, fear driven, over medicalized, pathologized, scientific. Um, so it's,
It's more fun and approachable. I mean, that makes it a lot easier, I think.
yeah, yeah. It's a little silly. It's a little goofy.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
Kind of
Well,
like,
that's interesting. So I have a section where we're going to talk about that, but I'm being disciplined. So the next thing I wanted to ask you about, it deals with young people, but specifically with STIs, sexually transmitted infections. And of course, at ASH, this has been a core part of what we do for literally over a century. So this group has the highest rate of STIs, like half of all new cases are in people ages 15 to 24.
mhm.
Condom use is declining, or at least it's plateaued among youth. And sex ed is really inconsistent at best. And I know you have a TikTok clip, and we're going to link to that on the topic, and we'll link to that. So let me ask you, what would be your key messages to young people around STI prevention?
Before I even begin to talk about prevention, I want to do my part in battling the stigma by making one thing abundantly clear. If you have an STI, if somebody you know has an STI, if your partner does, you're not dirty. You're not bad. You're not less valuable of a person, nor is your partner, your friends, sex workers, anyone for that matter. It's so incredibly common. About one in the statistic I saw most recently, I think it was the CDC, was about like 1 in 5 Americans, I think this was 2018, have or have had an STI. So when we say it's more common than you think, so much more common than you think.
Sure.
Um, but that being said, it is a health issue. And so we do want to be safe about it. But my key message I'd say would be this: knowledge is armor when it comes to this stuff. The very best thing you can do is just know. That way, whatever decisions you do decide to make, you can make them fully informed. And if anything does happen, not decision based, then you know what to do. I could yell until the cows come home about how important it is to use protection, and it is, but that doesn't really help people who decide that they want to have condomless sex, or whose condoms break, or God forbid if something non-consensual happens, or if a partner's unfaithful. Um, so I
I
feel like one needs to know this stuff.
Yeah, well said. And I'm glad you addressed the stigma piece, because we know that stigma is a real barrier to people accessing sexual health care services. Some people just simply don't go for exams or checkups, even when they say they know that it's important. They often don't go just because it's just so embarrassing.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's just one of the key things that we deal with. And the other thing too, as I was listening to you, I was thinking, there's a lot of disconnect between, who gets STIs and why. I mean, I mean, anyone can have an STI, and STIs often don't present really obvious symptoms. Say, hey, look at me, something's going on here. Sometimes they do, but not always. So that's why you really, you're right. People need to be educated about how all this stuff works, and how to have conversations with their healthcare providers, which we're going to get into, I promise, to the next session. But yes, so basically, preach, girl. Um,
Yeah.
so let me ask you this about testing. Um, I know that one of your clips, I think, deals with this kind of thing. And how do you bring that up in a way that doesn't leave the partner feeling defensive?
That's a good question. Because like you were saying, the stigma, it is so palpable. It's, you could cut it with a knife, just the big cloud it puts around relationships and health. But as for how to bring it up, let's say that somebody has a partner who initially is apprehensive. They're an unfortunate victim of the stigma surrounding it. And you're trying to figure out how to bring it up in a way that isn't offensive or awkward. I'll say that how you bring it up, how you talk about it, it sets the tone for the entire conversation that you're going to have. Um, One idea is, if you're in a position where it's like a long-term partner, you've already been having condomless sex for a while, You can tell them that you just discovered how likely it is to have an STI and show absolutely no symptoms, especially for somebody with female anatomy, which is
Mm.
unfortunately very true. And if you don't know and it goes untreated, there could be more severe health consequences. And it's been bothering you and you're concerned, and it would just be a huge relief if you guys could go test together, or you could set an example by doing it first. If you have a partner and you've been talking about having condomless sex, you can get tested and present your results to them first. It can make them feel more comfortable and make you feel more comfortable asking. But it doesn't have to be like sterile. Like you could get it printed out on a piece of paper and put a little bow on it, say, I have a surprise, and hand it to them. Like it can be silly. It doesn't have to be so,
Mm.
hospitally.
Yeah, that's a good point. Sometimes it's not so much what you say, but how you say it.
Mm-hmm. And that's another thing is it is definitely how you present it, but also I feel like there are some important words that you need to impart onto somebody. You could say something along the lines of, it's not a matter of us believing each other at our word. It's not a matter of trust. It's valuing each other and our health enough to make sure that we know this for certain, that you don't want to have any worries swirling around in the back of your mind. You want to be able to be present in the moment with them. um, the stigma alone, like it's understandable but unfortunate that it can make having conversations about this feel offensive and hurtful. And again, you can have a conversation, but a good partner should never get angry or intentionally try to make you feel guilty for asking. They should be willing to listen and understand. They should want you to be safe and comfortable, and you should want the same thing for them.
There you go. And considering again, you touched on the point that STIs don't often present themselves in obvious ways. They may not present themselves at all, certainly over the short term. And so testing is really the only way to figure that out. So it's really just about being safe and being sure, not about accusing someone. So yeah, well said. I'll mention that we have a page. We have a Yes Means Test project, yesmeanstest.org, and there's a clinic locator. People can pop in their zip code, find free or low cost clinics. And then we also have conversation starters to kind of get the ball rolling with the partner and to maybe break that ice a little bit. So check that out, if you will.
I actually have a link tree in my bio of a bunch of resources, and that is one of them that I have. I was going to bring
Nice.
the end
Thank
about
you.
like
Thank you. All
testing.
right. All right. So let's broaden this a little bit. So here's my rant, Julia. I'm going to just throw this out, and then I'll let you respond to it. So we don't have models for how to have sexual health conversations. That's true enough. But nobody ever gave me a model about talking, say, about my cholesterol levels or getting a flu shot, and I can do that well enough. But when it comes to sex, though, it seems to me that we need to learn how to accept this as a normal topic of conversation. So maybe we don't need to be told how to talk about sexual health as much as we need to reframe these conversations as ordinary, expected, and appropriate. So I put it to you, Julia. Do you think the issue is that we aren't taught how to talk about these things? Is it more that we're just not comfortable, or maybe a little bit of both?
Um, yeah, definitely got to be a little bit of both.
Okay.
There's a story that instantly comes to mind for me, and it's a little bit of a graphic story, but I'll keep all the details and stuff out. But I heard somebody say once that when they were growing up and when they were going through puberty and when their vulva was developing, um, they had no idea, they had never seen one that looked like theirs portrayed anywhere. And they asked their friend about it. What do you think? Are you familiar with these flaps? And the friend wasn't. And so the person thought that there might be something wrong with them. And so they got very close to taking some scissors and injuring themselves.
Oh,
That,
that's an image.
yeah. Hmm.
Mm,
And it's a graphic image, but I think it's an important one to have because
mm,
it really just drives the point home. That should never have happened. They should never have been made to feel that way. It's absolutely gut wrenching. Um, and little did they know, if they had been properly educated, they would know that over 56% or 54 something, it's a little over the majority of people with vulvas have an outie. So they have those flaps. And
mm.
they had known that, then they wouldn't have been put in that position. So it's not just about teaching information. At this point, it's so much more than that. It's about acknowledging the dark history that got us here and put that person in that position. And I feel like we need to give respect and credence to that. We didn't, as Kamala Harris said, we didn't just fall out of a coconut tree. We exist in the context of all in which we live and what came before us. So we can't have those conversations about the ordinary, the expected, and the appropriate without first knowing not just how to talk about it, but what makes it so hard to do and why we haven't done it. So I think in order to find that middle ground, we just need to keep talking. It's either unacknowledged, which makes people feel like it's taboo or shameful, or it's way over medicalized, which makes the information feel so inaccessible. But we don't have to pick between those two options. And the way we talk about it, we can make a new one where it's cool and fun to learn about. Nobody feels judged. Of course, there is a place for that medicalized info, but when it comes to teaching the average Joe, they don't need to know the Latin root words of all the diseases. They just need to know how to keep themselves safe day to day. So why not do it in a way that represents just how natural, normal, and common it actually is?
Okay. Let's get a little more specific. So, we really don't get a guidebook on giving and receiving sexual pleasure and satisfaction. And I'm sure that's something that would benefit if we knew how to talk about that. So, how do you start this kind of chat with a sweetie?
The answer, this is so tricky. I would say that this is probably the number one most asked question that I get. And the biggest complaint that I've heard by far is not feeling that seamless like sex that you see like in TVs and movies and stuff like that. So the answer to how to do it, how to start the chat is in the question. You just have to chat. It doesn't matter how good you think you are at it or how many other people in the past you've, been able to da 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 da. Uh,
Mm,
Pleasure is not generalizable. It is not. For the sake of the comfort and consent of the person or people that you're doing it with, and generally just for the sake of a good time, communication is a requirement. Uh,
mm,
and not talking, assuming that you're the expert, it perpetuates this idea I, of what I think of as like a contractual view of sex, where pleasure is something either given or taken
uh-huh.
or surrendered, or but where pleasure is something that is given or done onto you rather than something you get to experience with somebody. So
Almost like a commodity.
yeah, exactly. It's the commodification of it. And it takes away everything that sex is supposed to be, which is two things: consensual and enjoyable. And if you have to feel like you're following a script, this probably isn't very, very
Yeah.
enjoyable. And I think that feeling, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Feeling insecure about the degree of pleasure you're able to provide to a partner. You're staking your ego on what you perceive as your ability
Mhm,
to provide pleasure. And that's
mhm,
not fair to anyone involved, yourself or the people you're doing it with. So, as for ways to bring it up, you can sext ahead of time and kind of talk about what they like. And not only does that prepare you, but it builds anticipation. Or you can bring it up during the deed. Do you like this? Where do you want my hands to go? Show me this, show me that.
mhm.
Or you can do like
Yeah.
a little Dora the Explorer pillow type the conversation after and be like, what was your favorite part? What did you like? Mine too. Um, and it can be hot, but it can also be awkward, and that's fine. Awkward doesn't mean bad. It doesn't have to. It can be endearing as well, but it makes it human because sex isn't seamless. It's not what you see in the TV shows and in the movies. Rarely does it ever occur without words exchanged. You're not being graded on it. It's not a performance. It's okay to make it up along the way as you go and to talk to the person about it as you do.
I love that. I love the way you framed that. Speaking of TVs and movies, so Julia, is romance dead? Is sex passé? I mean, neither is true in absolute terms, but it seems that we're angrier, we're more polarized, we're fearful, we're just really busy. I mean, are you optimistic about our ability to connect and find love, or do the Hallmark holiday movies really just hearken to tropes that are growing ever more distant?
Ugh, lovely question, and one that I could talk about for hours, but I won't. I'll try to keep it short. From like a sociological perspective alone, courtship and romance have always changed and they will always change. In the 1600s, you were sent a portrait of some lady from a faraway land and then a dollar sign, and then 3 months and some seasickness later, you were getting married to them. In the 50s, you'd ask someone's dad's permission to take him to the sock hop. In the 80s, you were holding a boombox outside the window. Romance is still very much alive and well. It just looks different today because, I mean, it does. Of course it does. Today isn't yesterday, and yesterday isn't the 1600s. It doesn't have to look like a dozen roses and handwritten poetry, but those kinds of gestures, they are still absolutely out there for anyone who wants it. Surely when people stopped writing letters and started being able to call on a rotary phone, there were people saying, romance is dead. We're all doomed as a society. But nowadays we romanticize laying on the bed, kicking your feet, twirling the cord in your fingers, hoping that your parents aren't listening and on the other line. It changes over time. And I don't think
Yeah.
that we have anything to be afraid of. I think it's just hard to recognize where we are now as not being the final destination, but just a stop along the way. And I think that hookup culture is is a big thing that people are upset about. And this is going to be my hot take. I'll do a little blurb on this, and then I'm done.
Okay.
I think it's not inherently toxic. I don't think it represents the downfall of our society as a whole. I'm a big fan of it. I think that it's great that we're doing that. I see it as a way of is being a marker of us kind of shedding and disregarding the the decades and centuries and millennia of sexual sanctions, and it's just allowing us to be more liberated. And I think that that's what we can discern from it, is that we're allowed to see sex as meaning different things to different people. That's fine. It doesn't, for some people it does require like a deeper, more emotional connection, but that is most certainly not the case for everybody. And I think that that's what's so beautiful about all this stuff, is that that's okay. It really is okay. And that's what I hope to impart onto people, is that as long as you're consenting and enjoying, there is no wrong way to do it or look at it or feel about it.
Wow. Um, we've been talking with Julia Fowlkes, whose career as a sex health educator pretty much seems to already be in flight. This has been an amazing conversation, and listeners, I'll tell you, I've already gently suggested to Julia we may need to do a part two, and I suspect
Boy,
you want me to do exactly that. So stay tuned for that. Julia, where can our listeners find you? Where can they connect with you?
um, I, the only thing I have is the TikTok, and that's Sex Ed
Okay.
Miss. That's it. Nothing else.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to link to that in the show notes. Look her up, folks. You won't be disappointed. I promise you. Thank you, Julia. This has been amazing, and you're amazing. I really can't tell you how much I appreciate this.
I appreciate it too. It has been my honor.
Wonderful. And thank you, intrepid listener, for tuning in. In the show notes, just on the page where you access this episode, as I said, we'll have links to Julie and also to our Yes Means Test page. So please take a look, and we hope you keep tuning in. So until next time, goodbye.